Hello, everybody. Today, I wanted to talk to you about Swatch's new collaboration with Blancpain, their release of a plastic version of Jean-Jacques Fichte's iconic modern dive watch design. And perhaps the phrase, that particular phrase, gives you an idea of my ambivalent position towards this release. On the one hand, I'm extremely happy that one of my favorite watch designs of all time, and in one of my favorite categories of a sports watch at that, the dive watch, is going to get lots of love, at least some sort of sustained attention, no matter how short lived and how fleeting. How much this trend will last and how it will compare to last year's Moon Swatch craze, Swatch Group's previous inner collaboration between Omega and Swatch. And on that note, back when the Moon Swatch was released and when I had a chance to think a little bit about this particular issue and about how Swatch will proceed with perhaps similar releases, I predicted that it makes sense for them to make a Swatch version of 50 Fathoms, which at that point I had called Thrifty Fathoms. I'm sticking to that. I'm trademarking that name. And it made sense because 2023 is not only the 70th anniversary of the design of Blancpain 50 Fathoms, it is also the 40th anniversary of Swatch as a brand. Um, and I remember in 2013, Swatch released, of course, their first automatic movement, the System 51, which is an homage to the fact that their first quartz movements had 51 components. This time around, they devised a self-winding mechanical movement that had 51 components, all of which um, were assembled and finally finished by a single screw without the manipulation of the human hand, um, completely on the assembly line on a line of mechanical reproduction. So it made sense, right, that they would return to that concept a decade down the line when it's time to also celebrate the 70th anniversary of Blancpain's 50 Fathoms. And as you guys know, Blancpain, during the leadership of Jean-Claude Biva and Jean-Jacques Piguet, famously used the slogan, "We are Blancpain. We have never made a quartz watch, and we never will." So it made sense to combine these forces, idioms, these approaches, which is not to say philosophies, of the two brands, um, and make a release out of that. And as you see, it's people who have been caught up in the hype have already bought their examples. They have already started parading wrist shots and wrist rolls and reels on social media. Everyone seems very excited about it. So it seems, I think, right time that I share my 2 cents as well. they have released these five different iterations, five different versions, all of which evoke a specific body of water, an ocean. The depth rating is suggestively, um, which is to say, even poetically, 91 meters, which equals 50 fathoms, something Jean-Jacques Fichter, who is actually quite a capable um, author, quite a strong literary pen, borrowed from Shakespeare's Tempest. Of course, that particular line specifies 5 fathoms. It wasn't as deep, as profound um, for a dive watch. Full fathom 5, thy father lies. The alliteration was too suggestive, too hard to miss out. So the watch ended up being called 50 fathoms. You see, I wanna say negative things. I wanna trash the watch, but I get carried away with my love for Jean-Jacques Fichter, who was lost to us just last year. Um, Now, my aversion to most of the colorways aside, I have to say that the price point is attractive and certainly not prohibitive at $400, which substantiates the argument that this is a way of democratizing access to the quintessential dive watch. Of course, I know of this obscure Japanese maker called Seiko who has been doing that since late 60s, but never mind. I guess that we can pretend that never happened. We can pretend that they don't still exist and are still as strong in opposing, if not necessarily always beating, the Swiss at their own game. The dimensions of these pieces of the Blancpain Swatch collaboration, the Scuba 50 Fathoms, what I call Thrifty Fathoms, are almost universally appealing for a dive watch and quite enticing for a sports watch um, more broadly, 42.3 millimeters in diameter, 14.4 millimeters in thickness, and the lug to lug width is 48 millimeters. So it should be wearable for all shapes and sizes and kinds of wrists. Each case back is decorated with a depiction which rotates with the self-winding mechanism of a unique nudibranch, these colorful creatures of the deep sea native to that particular body of water. But I want to say something about the System 51 movement that will, I think, finally clarify the kind of ambivalence, the kind of dilemma, the kind of problem we are facing when we think about this watch, even if we want to get excited about it. It's relevant to Blancpain's mantra of never having made a quartz watch, even as it allows them to expand their horizons beyond simply being a legacy maker of tool watches as well as complicated pieces. As a self-winding movement, the System 51, of course, represents uh, both the best and the worst of Swatch's pop art approach to horology. These are calibers made of only 51 components, which is quite impressive, held together by a single screw and entirely assembled on a mechanical production line. The unique architecture, however, and this production method also mean that System 51 movements are not serviceable and that they cannot be regulated. Of course, Swatch marketing is very smart. They usually phrase this aspect um, as a kind of technical superiority, or they only address it from that perspective of technical ingenuity. And they always say it doesn't need to be regulated, but of course, any mechanical watch does. Speaking of that, by the way, I have one of the original System 51s, and I've gotten this sometime between 2013 and 2015, and I brought it out with some sort of excitement about the new release and quickly figured out that it was no longer running. And there's no way to make it work, right? There's absolutely no way to make it work again, which of course defeats the very purpose of a mechanical watch. So, combined with the plastic cases of these watches, of the Scuba 50 Fathoms, of the Thrifty Fathoms, and please spare me the bioceramic angle, this simply means that ironically, these pieces, which are presented with a major marketing campaign that centers on preservation and sustainability, caring for our oceans and such, will end up producing thousands and thousands of units that will spend most of their worldly existence chucked away in some kitchen drawer. And that's already um, an optimistic scenario. Perhaps that's a poetic summation of the Swatch Group's uniquely ambivalent position in the horological industry. Without their valiant effort, in the wake of the quartz crisis, the industry may not have survived at all, and it most certainly would not have been in the vigorous shape that it is today. Their namesake brand, however, Swatch, which celebrates now its 40th anniversary, continues to represent the antithesis of that most sacred ideal that is represented today by mechanical timepieces, those quaint, mostly antiquated, and absolutely beautiful everyday objects that have the power to stand the test of time and survive for generations through a lasting conjugation of technical innovation and human perfectibility, um, that jointure of institutional legacy and interpersonal relationships, right, between uh, grandfathers and grandsons, fathers and sons, grandmothers and their children and their grandchildren. There's so many beautiful stories that are specifically generated and that stay with us precisely because mechanical watches have that ability of standing through the test of time, being able to be serviced and even possibly bettered over time and lasting for generations. This new Thrifty Fathoms, no matter how enticing it looks from certain angles, will never have that kind of staying power, even if the trend lasts at least for the year, even if the sales numbers rival the kind of numbers that the Moonswatch achieved. Thank you for listening to me. Um, Please drop a comment and let me know what you think. If you would like to subscribe to the channel, that will make me really happy, and we can sustain these conversations on regular live streams, which I hold pretty religiously at night at 8 p.m. In either case, please share this video far and wide, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.